We are aware that around our different communities and the world at large, death by suicide is a huge cause for concern. You know, families have continued to lose their loved ones to death by suicide. And this has led to several unanswered questions like why suicide? You know, people have even asked how they can identify a suicide risk. Others are even asking how they can encourage a healthy environment for everyone else to thrive. Some others have asked how they can find help. So it is on this note that I felt the need to step in and organize a community conversation of this magnitude. So for us to answer all these questions, we'll begin by giving Dr. Ubong Udofia the room to give us a brief understanding of suicidal ideation and suicide causes. So Dr. Ubong, I'm going to unmute you or unmute yourself. I'm just going to unmute everyone, but please do not speak. Please do not speak. Dr. Ubong, I don't know if you can hear me. You have the room now to speak to us about suicide ideation and just to
Hello,
give us a
Quinol.
brief understanding.
Hello, Quinol. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so I'll give a little brief on suicide ideation and the causes. So I would like to say that suicide ideation is where a person has thoughts of killing himself or herself. And before we understand this concept or this experience, one has to have some definitions. So I'll define suicide. It's where a person successfully ends his or her own life. A person ends his her own life by injuring his or herself with an intent to kill himself or herself. That's suicide. And let's say deliberate self-harm is whereby a person injures himself, not with an attempt to kill his or herself, but with an attempt to draw attention. Then suicidal attempt, where a person has tried to kill himself but does so unsuccessfully. Now it's a global concern. It's a concern because the rates are increasing. The WHO has noticed that between 2013 and 2020, it has been increasing. And as at 2012, they recorded about 800 people successfully kill themselves every year. And some other studies have put it at around 1,000 people successfully kill themselves every year. Now, this is serious because for every person that successfully kills his or herself, okay, times 30 of that amount attempts suicide. That's why it's a very serious problem. Am I being heard? Am I being heard?
Yes, yes, I can
hear you.
Okay. That's why it's a very, very serious problem. And the leading population in Nigeria, for example, is the youth, because as people get older, they die faster. So we have the youth. They make up majority of the population. And you find out that suicide is the second leading cause of death in people aged 15 to 29. Second leading cause, first being caused from accidents, unintentional accidents. Okay, but for suicide is the second leading cause of death. And that is why it's very important. Now, let's look at suicidal ideation. Okay, I explained that it's when one has a thought of killing his or herself. Now, there are two kinds of suicidal ideation or thoughts. One, active and passive, whereby in active, the person has gone the extra mile of looking for a way to kill himself or herself or themselves. Then the passive, he only has the thoughts and he has not yet tried to find a way out. Now, that's the brief. Now, males successfully kill themselves more than females, while females make more attempts than males. So this is the epidemiology or how common suicide rates are. Now, why do people have thoughts about killing themselves? Because they say that the world is a terrible place. And despite that fact, not everybody tries to kill themselves. So why do people kill themselves? Now, the first thing usually is whereby a person has a feeling of hopelessness, a feeling of despair, or a feeling that things are no longer under his or her control. Now, what points can one have such kinds of feelings? Now, usually the most common could be relationship problems, but usually the from my experience, the majority of these feelings of despair and helplessness is when a person has a mental health challenge. Okay, so 90% of attempted suicides or completed suicide has shown that the person had one or two mental health issues. Okay, and some other times you could have chronic medical illness. So more than 90% of suicide causes are border around mental health challenges as well as medical health issues. Now, 50%, that half half of the people who have attempted suicide, there has been no link between medical or um, psychiatric or mental health issues. So in these other situations, you could have things like maybe relationship problems, um, substance use, pressure at work, financial issues, amongst others. So there's so many things that can cause or can be fingered as a risk or a cause of a person having suicidal thoughts. So I think that's the basic one. Quinel, are you there? Hello, am I being heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, you're being heard. Thank you very much, Dr. Ubong. This was very, very insightful. I'm going to go over to Mr. David Folaranmi. I want Mr. David to just give us, just help us understand a lot more about suicide and how it relates to his field of. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
We can hear you. We can hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Mr. David, please can you speak to us about addiction and how it relates to suicide? Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I hope everybody can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, but increase your voice a little bit, Mr. David.
Pastor,
increase your voice a little bit.
We can barely hear what you're saying.
Uh-huh.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Better.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Ubong, for that very, very insightful introduction to this topic.
So sorry, David. Before you continue, David, sorry. Queen, can you mute the other guy whose microphone is on? We're having the sound of children there. One AK Nana man, please mute him.
Can I go on now?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Quinel, for putting this together. Thank you, Dr. Ubong, for the very, very insightful introduction. It's always a pleasure to hear you speak. I've learned a lot already. Very quickly, I have very limited time. We'll be talking about addiction and how it relates to suicide. Now, last week I was on a webinar, something like this, and somebody was saying suicide is a form of mental health illness. Now, I was going to start off by saying it's not, but I'm very thankful to Dr. Ubong, who has clarified that part very well for us. 90% of suicidal attempts are recorded to have been born out of a type of mental health issue. And this can range from PTSD to GAD to DID, and then to addiction itself. Very quickly, we know that addiction is a chronic relapsing brain disease characterized by the compulsive need to engage in a behavior or consume a substance irrespective of its harmful consequences. Now, when certain people get into this disease, when they start suffering from this disease of addiction, and they try all they can to come out of it, and they find out that they can't, they start nursing suicidal thoughts. Now, I have experienced this. In August 2017, I attempted suicide, which was very nearly fatal. And this was born out of frustration to win my struggles over addiction. So I mixed a lethal dose of poison, rat poison, and bleach. And I put in half a bottle of Coke and ingested it. And I very nearly lost my life on that evening. But for the timely intervention of my family, who rushed me to Federal Medical Center in Jabi, Abuja. And the consultant psychiatrist who was on call that night said, if I hadn't been brought in 10 minutes later, I may have lost my life. Now that's a true life story of me who is speaking to you, who had not the idea of suicide because I was battling with addiction. Now there's another story of a young girl who I know very well. We're very close to their families. She comes from a very powerful home in Nigeria, father a top politician, mother a big businesswoman. And then when she was 19, she was going to be sent to the, sorry, I always like to give stories when I talk about these things so we can drive the topic down home. You know, I thank God for people like Dr. Ubong who have all of the medical expertise, and we listen to the professional angle. I like to give real life experiences so people can actually relate to what we're saying. So at the age of 19, she was going to be sent to the United Kingdom for her studies. That's this girl we're talking about. She's actually in my upcoming book where I told all of my stories and the experiences I went through struggling with addiction, and then the experiences of others who also I came across in that period. So at this time, her parents and my parents had we had a dinner, and they said, okay, this young girl is going to be going to the UK. Mr. David, you're much older, so make sure you take care of her and all of that kind of stuff. So I said, okay. And then shortly afterwards, I was using drugs at the time, and I found out that she also was using drugs at the time. So she would always, whenever I go to her, the father's house, their mighty mansion in Abuja, she would always say to me, speaking Hausa language, I'm depressed. That's what she would say to me. She would say, look, I don't feel happy. Now, this is a girl who looked like the life of the party. She was full of life. She was always smiling. She drove the best cars at that age. She used the best gadgets. It didn't look like there was anything wrong with her, which is why I always tell people that depression is not sadness. You know, a lot of people think people who have a gloomy face and they're not talking to you, those are depressed people. No, depression comes in different forms. And that's why we should always check on people. Sometimes people have this smiling face and it looks like all is well, yet deep down inside they're suffering from depression. Okay, I have very limited time before Quinel will lock me out. So she would always complain to me, and she'll tell me that she takes solace in addiction. She takes solace in using substances. That was the only thing that made her feel better. But then in a case where she had all the money in the world to buy everything she needed in terms of drugs, I would always tell her that, look, this is not going to end well. You know, for people like us who didn't have too much money, there were times when we would need our fix and we'll have to walk around the streets of Abuja and beg 100 people before we can get enough to get what we needed. But she didn't have that problem. She had so much money to buy whatever she wanted. So every time I told her that, she would say to me, she's depressed, and if she's going to end her life, then she wants to end it with an overdose. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. So she knew the implications of spending so much and ingesting so much drugs, yet she was okay with it. Now, at some point, I had to return to Nigeria, and then she was still in the UK. And in November, she called me one night, and said, look, she's going out to buy some drugs, and then she wanted to have a little party in the house. So I said, okay. And then she went out, and then we're Skyping. Then I think there was no Zoom and all these things and WhatsApp calls. We're Skyping, and she showed me the quantity of drugs she had bought. And the last thing I said to her was, you're going to kill yourself. And she said back to me, if she's going to kill herself with an overdose, and that will end her depression, then she doesn't mind. At this time, she was about 21. So I was genuinely worried. I kept on calling her, and she would laugh it off and say she's fine. I was following her minute by minute when she was using, and at some point I couldn't reach her anymore. And so I got very worried. So I called a friend of mine who was in the UK, who lived not too far from her house, and I told him to go check on her. He got to her place, and the gate was locked. And I told him, please just get in no matter how you can. If you have to go over the fence, go over the fence. He said, no, of course he can't do that. He's going to get into trouble. So I said, okay, please call the police. So he dialed 999, and the police came in about 5 minutes. All this while, I was on the phone with him. So I knew when the police got there, and then they got into the house, and then it was taking a while. So I kept on asking him, what's happening, what's happening, what's happening? He kept on saying he doesn't know. He's outside. He's not even close to, he's not by the gate. He's like away on the streets, just monitoring what's happening. And then while we're having that conversation, I heard a siren of the ambulance. You know, the ambulance siren is different from that of the police and stuff like that. So I heard the ambulance siren. I'm like, okay, there's an ambulance coming. What's happening? He said he doesn't know. The ambulance is just driving past. And then he said, okay, no, the ambulance is driving into their house. So I said, okay, that must be good news, right? He said, yes. And then the paramedics went into the house. And I was asking him, what is happening? Please tell me what is happening. He said he doesn't know. Nobody has come out. And then in a few minutes, he said, okay, they are wheeling her out on the gurney. And I said, that must be good news, right? He said, no, it's not good news because her head is covered with the white cloth, which means she has passed. And then I just broke down in tears, and everybody around me couldn't understand that I knew this young girl had taken her life. It was suicide, and it was by an overdose of hard drugs. So suicide, the intent or the act of taking one's life, like Dr. said before us, is usually born out of a mental illness or a number of different mental illnesses. And then depression, of course, is one of it. But an addiction, which most times people overlook, is another reason why people attempt suicide. And to sort of put an end to this, if we can say we can put an end to it, we need to do more drug abuse prevention campaigns, more drug abuse prevention programs. Lucille is here. I mean, she did an excellent job. The government, through the NDLEA and other relevant stakeholders, are doing so well, but we can't leave this to them. All hands must be on deck to be able to put a curb, to be able to put a stop to this menace. And then if each and every one of us plays our part in this drug demand reduction through enlightenment, advocacy, sensitization, education, you know, I believe strongly that we're going to reduce it a great deal. Quinel, I don't know if I have more time. I was about to tell one more story, but I think I've run out of time. So thank you very much for the invite. I'm still around. I'm shooting a documentary here, but I had to excuse myself to be on this Zoom meeting. So I'm around for questions or input anywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. David. That was very, like, I mean, listening to you, it just brought the conversation back home. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to what you are saying or what you already said. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to go ahead and invite Mr. Ehi Eden to speak on workplace mental health and suicide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Queen, for inviting me, and thank you to the two speakers before me. Those were very stimulating contribution. I'll be looking at it from the point of workplace, but I will start by saying work improves mental health, and work also destroys or ruins mental health. It depends on the position where you pick it from. We have seen workplaces that have destroyed people that were literally the best hands they hired. It's only that the work was too tough or the work was too much for them to do. They just found themselves in the wrong workplace and found themselves being managed by people that have no clue on what it means to manage people and manage their mental health. And that was what happened. We need to start creating what you call psychologically safe workplaces. And what that means, where we can balance the work demand out with individual demand. Lately, there have been so much competitiveness across the world. I mean, technology is advancing in greater proportion, and the demand on people are becoming too extreme. And what we have is imbalance between the task that people have to do and the competencies and capabilities they have to deliver on those tasks. We don't look at those tasks, those competencies and how to improve them in the workplace. All we want to do is that the organization wants profits. Profit by all means at the expense of people's mental health. We have always asked the question, when you make profit or you declare your profit at the end of your financial year, be bold enough to declare how many mental health you ruin to declare those profits. And the time has come where we can start holding people accountable. We need to start training managers who are able to manage people and preserving their mental health. Work burden has become the order of the day. Burnout, I mean, giving people what you know realistically they cannot deliver on, but you just want to stress themselves beyond their coping capability. And these are clear things that happen in the workplace. And most of them get home at the end of the day using drugs and coping substances to cope. And at the end of the day, it's not improving their mental health. Instead, they are sliding deeper into mental health. We have a lot of people that have got so depressed or so overwhelmed by work. And you see them, the job they used to like, they no longer want to come to that workplace at the dawning of a new day. They wake up in the morning, they're afraid to go to work. They wake up in the morning, they're reluctant to go to work. I mean, the work is impacting on their mental health negatively. But what we always say, there is no job that is too important that you sacrifice your mental health for. If the job is destroying your mental health, quit that job. You will always get something to keep you going at the end of the day. So the job when the job takes your mental health away, it takes away all that you have, what you have left. The entirety and the totality of your existence is gone. So if you have such jobs that are not psychologically safe for you, we advise you stay away from such an environment. Look for a job that can provide for your mental health and keep you going. We have such people in the workplaces that sit down and keep discussing suicide, and people don't take cognizance of what they're talking about. At the end of the day, we leave them. We knew they were discussing suicide. We knew these people would commit suicide, and we just ignore them. And the next thing we hear is just like my other colleague mentioned earlier on, this person has committed suicide. And you have discussion like one day I will not be here anymore. One day all this mess will end. Those are pointers that you need to start looking at when somebody is talking about. Even if you cannot help, look for how you can signpost them, point them to where they can have a help. Get somebody that you know they can talk to, call that person in as quickly as possible. But instead, we leave them most time because mental health has even become a thing that we don't even discuss in our workplace. It's kept under wrap. But the truth is that the earlier we start opening what you call mental health conversation in the workplace, the better for us all. But you realize we talk about how we have typhoid and malaria in the workplaces, but nobody is able to talk about, I have mental health disorder. I'm sorry for mental health illness. People don't want to talk about it. Why? Because the stigma is still too huge. We need to first start in the workplace, start tearing the stigma apart. Take it out of the workplace. Let the CEOs, let the CEOs of the companies be able to talk about mental health. I mean, share personal stories. If the CEO has in any way suffered mental health condition, let it be published. Put it on the notice board. Let everybody read it so that people can. What you do with this is that you are empowering people to talk about mental health. But until we start empowering mental health conversation in the workplace, we'll have mental health issue and we are not able to manage it. I came to Abuja. I'm in Abuja right now. I went to have a discussion with my younger sister and her husband. And lo and behold, I just realized that my sister is suffering from mental health illness. And nobody ever knew. I just got to know today. So right now, I'm booking an appointment for her to see a doctor in Abuja sometime next week. But the truth is that this happens every day, and people don't want to talk. And the more we keep mute, the more we maintain silence, the more people slide into mental health and suicide. So I think we should empower everybody to just see how we can speak out. Don't wait until it is too long. It is too late. It is better you speak out right now when you notice the early signs. Speak out. Don't speak out because it's your sister. Don't speak out because it is you. But speak out of concern because you see somebody who is showing symptoms of mental illness. Yes, in the workplaces, we can make profits, but when profit gets stained by blood of people whose mental health we have ruined, it is no longer profit. Let's not put profit above workers' mental health and well-being. What mental health and well-being should be balanced out. I mean, in line with profit that we make. And when we put this one as priority in the workplace, we'll just get our workers better. And again, I just think this discussion is very apt at this time, and I'm very happy to be a part of this conversation. Thank you so much, Queen, for inviting me. I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, Mr. He. I mean, all that you said is very profound, and it relates so well to how these situations can actually affect a person in the sense that they would even start becoming, start having suicidal ideation. So thank you very much. I'm going to call the next person. We are kind of running out of time, but I mean, we'll be able to manage to ensure that the necessary points and the necessary information that we have to pass is actually passed. I'm going to be calling on Anna to speak on sickle cell and how it relates to suicide. Thank you very much. Anna, I hope you're there.
I'm here. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be part of this. I've learned a lot from the other speakers. Sickle cell anemia. Well, I think you can't really talk about suicide ideations, depression, without talking about chronically ill people, right? They have the highest data in when you check population of people who, attempt suicide or eventually commit suicide. Now, sickle cell anemia has actually been one thing we don't talk about much in Nigeria. And since they've really been stigmatized, a lot of people do not want to come out, to say, I have sickle cell anemia, right? So I'm going to be sharing maybe one or two stories so we can help out. Recently, we had a hangout. We have this sickle cell hangout where we invited warriors from all over to Abuja to talk about depression, to talk about suicide attempts, ideation, all of those things. And I heard quite a lot. I'll just try to share maybe one or two, manage time. I got to notice that most times, most of the surgeries, the bone marrow transplants carried out here in Nigeria, we have close to 80% unsuccessful cases, right? And now this surgery is actually really expensive. So you get to really sit and then try to bring money together to, go for a surgery, and then later get to find out that it wasn't done successfully, or you have to come back again for something. There's this warrior. He was in the university somewhere around Kefi. He came to Abuja to get money for clearance, actually. When Japheth came around, he reached out to people. He reached out to me. He said he wanted to just come get money and then go back to school. He'll be done. It was for clearance, right? We were happy because he was almost done, and then somehow we got to discover that he needed to undergo surgery. He had this minor crisis and he went to the hospital and got to find out he had to undergo surgery. When it was time for the surgery, put money together, got into the hospital. When he got to the hospital, the surgery was carried out. At first, we thought it was successful. We're so happy. And then a few weeks later, we started noticing that the leg didn't heal. It started bringing out substances like mucus, so it was very difficult because he needed to go in again for another surgery. When he went in for the second surgery, he came out. He couldn't leave the hospital for about a month. His mates graduated, the next month. He stayed at the hospital for about 3 months. One day we, reached out to know what was going on. And he said he was tired, that he couldn't keep up. He just wanted to end it all. Now, most times, these suicide ideations, the idea and all of that for sickle cell warriors is not just because of the pain. A lot of time, it's because of the stigma that comes with it. Could you imagine people coming to the hospital and telling you stuff like, you're actually possessed? Like, I don't think this thing is normal. People coming from the church to come and pray and they're like, no, this is from devil. This is from the demon, giving you ideas that you're not normal. So most times it's just really not just the pain. Sometimes it has everything to do with stigmatization. So he tried to take SS drugs, the drugs that were given to him at the hospital. He wanted to take SS, said he was tired. And then he took it, but he was in the hospital, so he was really attended to. He wanted to do, get it over and done with, and then just wait till he gets home. He got home. The good thing about it is he had families. Now he couldn't use his legs anymore. He started using crutches. He could not go back to school, even up till date. This has been like 3 years ago, but up until now, he hasn't gone back to school. So Nigeria is not really helping when it comes to sickle cell anemia, when it comes to awareness, when it comes to the bone marrow transplants and all of that. But I think we as individuals, we can do more to reduce the level of stigmatization, the level of hate speeches that are given to these people. I want everybody to get to see sickle cell warriors as humans, as normal people. Recently, a girl I didn't know, I think she's in Benin, she tweeted something and she was complaining that she was tired, her family members are tired, and that since her family members are tired, there was no point she was going to be alive. According to her, after that video, she was going to commit suicide. She said it was going to be the last thing she was going to share on Twitter. Now she's well known, so someone saw the video and sent it to me. So I got her contact and I called her. When I called her, I asked her, I was like, where are you? She said she was home and that her parents are tired. So most times when she gets to have crisis, she's about 28 years. When she gets to have crisis, they don't pay attention anymore. Everybody just go about their normal life because they're tired. According to her, she said that they've tried and it's been over 28 years. And then I asked her, I said, what do you like to do? Let's leave sickle cell anemia for a bit. And what do you like to do? What do you think when you do it, you would feel better, you'll be happy? And she said she loves to read books and she loves to get food. Now, we've already created the sickle cell community. We're trying our best at our end. So I introduced her to the community. We got to share PDFs, ebooks and all of that. And then we sent money so she could get food. I waited till evening and then I called back. I was like, how are you? How do you feel now? She said she's better. And then she said something. She said, I've never felt this loved and I've never felt this among in a very long time. So I feel like as individuals, we can do more. We can do more. We can treat everybody equally. Now, I know a lot of warriors who have issues at their workplace. When he was talking about workplace, I could really relate to what he was saying because I know a lot of warriors who at their workplace are being really discriminated. They're like, don't come here, or please, please, please. Tomorrow you say you don't want to come to the office because you're feeling this way, you're feeling this way. I want we society to be better. I want us to treat warriors as humans. I don't think it's so much, but I know it's something that we can do. Already they go through a lot. The pain is excruciating. It's like a lot of them are actually addicted to certain substances because they are used to taking drugs already. So their life to an extent is already a bit difficult than an average person. So I think we should do more. We should try as much as possible to support them. And if, you as an individual, do not know your genotype. I always say this anytime I have an opportunity to talk. Please get to know your genotype. We can't be trying to curb this and then still trying to raise other kids, right? A lot of warriors are suicidal. If you know a warrior, try to reach out to them, talk to them. They're really going through a lot. I think I don't have much time, but then I would just stop by saying we should do more. We should do more of good speeches, positive speeches when it comes to warriors. We should try as much as possible to reduce or even stop, if we can, the level of stigmatization they get from the society. They need more support than they need the hate speeches. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anna. Anna, thank you so much for creating awareness in that aspect for sickle cell warriors, because most people really underrate, the effects that this situation actually puts the warriors in. So we learned so much from that. Thank you so much for creating awareness in that space. So I'm going to be calling on a speaker from the creative space. That's the everyday chapter. I'll be calling on Yomi to speak about anything he knows about the subject matter. So Yomi, you have the floor now. I hope you're there.
Yeah, can everyone hear me? Good evening. Please indicate if you can hear me. I'm not sure if everyone can hear me. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I can hear you, sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so I really want to appreciate this platform and the Queen for putting together this. And I also want to appreciate the speakers that have spoken ahead of me too as well. I'm not a professional in any way, and I think I am learning, and I have also learned a lot from this conversation so far. Yeah. So, when I spoke with Queen some days back, she told me that okay, she would love to hear about any experience so far from the creative space, because at the Everyday chapter we work with a lot of creatives, and I mean I'm not sure the statistics is completely correct, but I think a lot of creatives they experience suicidal ideation as well. A lot of creatives they go through the phases of depression, and I think as one of the guests said, um, suicide is more like a mental illness. I don't know if I got that correctly, but yeah. So sometimes I think it's like a phase that leads from, the battles in the mind, and eventually you just feel like you have to give up. And I think a lot of creatives, especially in Nigeria, they have those issues. And sometimes these issues, I mean, they come from maybe the impact of social media. I think social media has contributed to a lot of what is happening today in terms of suicide for young people, especially when a lot of people feel overwhelmed with what is happening out there, or they compare themselves with what is happening. There's that as well. So when I usually have conversations with young people, especially when it seems as if they are beginning to get to that edge where they feel like giving up, because it comes up a lot of times, especially when they are not really getting from life what they expect to have gotten at this particular stage. At that particular stage, they begin to have thoughts of if they can still continue. They are not better off being alive. Maybe their parents should not have given birth to them. I mean, you hear a lot of conversations like that. Some of these conversations, they seem to be woke conversations, but I think like one of the guests said, when you start hearing conversations like this, it's an indicator that okay, this person is on the periphery of either embracing the idea of suicide or about to commit. So I think for this conversation, we have a lot of persons from some organizations here. So I'd like to, add that for us organizations, we can do better. Like one of the guests also said, for workplaces, we can do better, like by initiating some of these conversations. I think for us at the Everyday chapter, I think earlier this year we organized a training, a mental health training for our volunteers, where we just basically opened up about what it feels like to be overwhelmed with work, what it feels like to start content when it gets to that point where you feel so overwhelmed and you just want to exit, or you just don't want to be part of, and I think most of our volunteers opened up and shared their concerns and everything. So I think from an organization standpoint or an admin standpoint, it's very important that we start introducing these conversations one way or the other into our system. I work with another organization called Troller X. It's a creative agency, and I remember that I think last year we had a mental health hangout. It's sort of a fun hangout, but at the same time, we had people come and talk about their vulnerabilities, and I think maybe we can do that again this year, where for creatives, basically, we can create that space where they can just come, like a safe space, because safe space, the word seems to be overused these days, but safe space should be safe. So I think in our organizations, or our organizations could create those safe spaces or safe events where people can just come and talk about what they're going through, and maybe there's a therapist around, or there's a mental health professional around to talk to people, because people are going through stuff. When you look around, I deal with a lot of young persons. I'm also young as well, and I can tell you that for every 5 person you meet out there, maybe 3, if not 4 out of them, they're going through these things. They've probably, maybe half of them have probably contemplated killing themselves. I'm not even an exception from that. I've been in that point whereby I just felt very tired. Maybe it didn't cross that stage, but it's a regular norm across young people nowadays. So as much as we can keep creating those safe spaces for them where they feel comfortable to come around, where they feel comfortable to talk, and also providing them the required help, I think that will be very important for most creatives going forward. So I don't know if I've spoken enough, or if we would love to hear anything further. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Yomi. That was very, very, it was very helpful. It was so helpful. Thank you so much. So we're going to be talking about the toll of suicide on families and loved ones. And like this part is going to be handled by Mental Health for Youth Initiative. We have Debola, who has a lived experience to share with us. So Debola, I hope you're up, because we are ready to listen to you. Hello, Mental Health for Youth Initiative. Can someone hear me? Lou, are you there?
Yes, I am. Demola's supposed to be here. He's on the call.
Yeah, I'm here now. I was trying to unmute the mic.
Okay.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Demola Ajayi, and I just want to share a little experience on having to deal with suicide by a loved one. So I lost someone I was dating when I was, I think I was 20 then. That was in 2013, and it was a consuming and overwhelming feeling, because this was my first time experiencing such. I was always hearing, oh, people committing suicide. I always used to feel like, oh, this thing is so distant from me. Like, how does one get to that point where you say, oh, you don't want to live anymore? So, first of all, I was bombarded with a lot of emotions when I discovered. I got to find out on social media. Someone called me, so a mutual friend called me. I was like, yo, what happened? The person was speaking to me, assuming that I knew what happened. So I'm like, what was this guy saying? So I think when he figured out that I didn't know anything, he just ended the call. And the first thing I did was call the person's cousin. I tried to speak to the cousin, but as soon as I called her, I couldn't even hear her. She wasn't even coherent. She was just crying. So I went on social media because she's very active on social media. And the first set of tweets I saw was, "Oh, why did you have to do this? Rest in peace, so and so." They mentioned her name. And I was dumbfounded. I didn't even know how to process I didn't know how to process what was going through my mind. Because, and I think part of a part of coping with suicide of a loved one that people don't speak about is the guilt that eats at you, that you feel like, oh, there's something you could have done, there was something you could have said. Because I mean, as at that time, I like to pride myself as someone who was very connected with their feelings, who knows how to, I mean, engage people when I feel like, oh, this person is down. So imagine someone that was so close to me got to that point, and I had no clue. This is someone that tries to cheer people up. She's always smiling. It was as if she had no issues. So I was shocked. I was shocked. I didn't know how to deal with it. I was living in denial for a while. I tried to. Sometimes I would even pick up my phone and try to call her number, because I mean, it was as if I couldn't. I was living in a nightmare. So I and the guilt was worse for me, because we had a little misunderstanding before. I think a night before, we had a little misunderstanding, and I think I can't even remember for what reason. Uh, that's how that's how little the issue was, and I just can't even remember what it was. So what part of the I think one of the reasons why it really affected me was that I blamed myself, and I felt like, oh, maybe if I was there was just a lot of what ifs. And how I feel like people don't talk about these things because of the stigma associated with suicide. Like, even if you're a loved one, you already feel a certain type of way. People feel like, oh, you guys have failed this person because you couldn't provide them a safe haven, or these people couldn't talk to you. And I don't think it's that easy. And the if a one of the ways I learned to deal with I mean, this is 9 years after now, and there's still sometimes I'm trying to move on, or I'm having fun, and then I just feel a pang of guilt. I feel like, oh, uh, this person, that thing just comes to my mind. I'm like, oh, this person is dead. Like, you come to terms. It's just like it's happening afresh. And when I try to do something fun, or I try to just go out there, I just have some moments where I just have to sit back and reflect. So I feel like seeking support, especially amongst people who have experienced the same thing. Because one of the things I did then was speak to someone, a mutual friend who was so close to her. I think we're just feeding off each other's energy, and trying to help each other to cope with the. I think you're already signaling to me that time is gone. Oh, I think I heard someone's voice.
Yes, Devola, you're actually out of time.
Okay.
You're actually out of time because we have the floor for Lou. Lou has something to contribute to this subject, the toll of suicide on families and loved ones. So I'm just going to let you take the floor.
Hi everyone. My name is Lucy. This has really been interesting. I have learned a lot from all that has actually been said today. So one thing I wanted to mention from following his story was, most times when people commit suicide, or when they think of committing suicide, they unfortunately do not, they feel like, oh, I am a burden to people around me, or like using the example that someone mentioned earlier about the warriors. They might feel like, oh, my parents are spending so much on me, or oh, I'm this or I'm that. And even if they know that it's going to hurt the people around them, sometimes they cannot help themselves. Now, it affects, it's not like they don't know that the people around them will be hurt, but then they can't help it. And after this happens, you, following what Demola just said, especially when the person is close to you, you feel a sense of guilt, like, oh, I should have listened more. And then you have cases of, you begin to remember when the person said, oh, I'm tired of life, or I can't take it anymore, or this is happening, that's happening. And then in some cases, we realized that when they were saying these things, we actually maybe downplayed what they were saying, or we didn't really think so much about what they were saying. So at the end of the day, there's this guilt that actually comes from having someone around you committing suicide. Now, for what we can actually do as individuals, at least to manage or at least help the people around us that are going through something similar. First is empathy, because if you're not empathic to other people, it's difficult for you to actually see what they're talking about. So Africans, we have this habit of, the moment someone tells you, oh, my leg is paining me, you have this urge to just tell the person, oh, my whole body is paining me. So you overshadow the complaint or the expression of hurt that the person is trying to tell you. So when you do that, the person might just go back to the shell and not really want to say what it is that the person is going through. And in some other cases, we just laugh about what they're saying, or you don't really feel sorry or pity for the person, at least understand what they're going through and at least help them talk it through or think it through. So empathy is very important, because at the end of the day, when someone unfortunately commits suicide, there's literally nothing at that point we can do than to feel guilty and to feel sad. So it's more important to know how to at least help someone in that situation. Also, therapy is really important. If you have anyone around, if you have anyone who you're suspecting, or all of a sudden they begin to talk about suicide or talking about how life doesn't mean anything anymore to them, or like they're just withdrawn. So from what most other speakers have said, they had talked about mental health, about suicide not being a mental health issue, but it's stemming from other things. So when you notice someone withdrawing, being tired of life, just acting abnormal, it's very important as someone who cares for their loved ones, at least check on them, call them, also seek therapy when you can't help them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lou. Lou, you even spoke into the other part of the conversation, but yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. Right now I'm going to leave the floor open for Dr. Ubong to speak to us about how we can identify or spot a suicide risk. Thank you.
Okay, hello, Quinel. Am I being heard?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, so how can a person spot a suicide risk, or a person who is at risk of suicide? Now, like I explained, the cause or risk factor for suicide is that this person has a feeling of hopelessness, feeling of despair, feeling that things are happening beyond his control. And he gets this feeling when there's a mental health, there's a chronic medical issue, or substance use issues, or life issues like relationships, PTSDs, and the rest. So the first thing that would come to the picture would be, okay, this person has attempted suicide before. So that's a risk. That's a very serious risk, because a person who has a history of suicidal attempts is most likely to be successful at the next attempt. Then number two, like I said, the person usually has a history or associated mental health challenge. And things like depression, PTSD, anxiety states. These are situations where a person is also more likely to commit suicide, mainly depression. And there are one or two symptoms that the person can present with. Now, some speakers have said that depression doesn't have this sad look. Sometimes the person can be cheerful, but then there will be some things that you would have observed in that person. Number one, there will be a change in this person's behavior. It could be withdrawing to himself, even though you would see that he's smiling, he's happy, but withdrawing to himself. Then number two, a couple of suicide attempters usually report themselves. They would say, I think I want to end my life. Something in relation to ending their life. So they will report to somebody. Life might be better if I was gone. Life would be okay if I didn't exist anymore. So you would hear one or two people say things like that. And usually when those kind of things are said, it shouldn't be taken for granted. Another risk factor is substance. A person at risk, a person who uses substances has increased risk of suicide, especially stimulants like cocaine, um, methamphetamine, or this ice, meth, that's ice, that's crystal meth or ice, yes, as well as alcohol, alcohol. So these are the substances that usually have even more greater risk of suicide. Okay, then being a male makes you more likely to complete suicide. Having heartbreak, maybe your boyfriend or your girlfriend breaks your heart. Now, most people get out of the sadness from relationships, but then a couple of people can get out of it. So when you have a friend or two who complain that my boyfriend just left me, or I'm feeling sad, don't be too quick to tell the person, just a boyfriend, get over it. So these are risk factors. Um, Now, also, hearing news about suicide is another risk factor. Okay, a person might have suicidal ideation, like I explained, suicidal thoughts. And I also explained that these thoughts can be passive or active. Active is that he has started looking for ways to end his life. Passive, he has not. Okay, so when he hears on the media, okay, this person killed himself via this method, it's also a risk. So I think that's the basis or the basic things that you can pinpoint a person who is more likely or at risk of killing himself or committing suicide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Obon. I hope that this is going to help a lot of people to look out for their loved ones more, and maybe the people around them, their co-workers, just to know when to see or when they can identify that someone is feeling hopeless or is having a feeling of despair or something really, just in a form or in a way that they can create a safe environment for other people to thrive. So, like in the light of this point that has been raised and has been made, I just want us to also understand the legal implication of suicidal attempts, because it's also necessary that when we are talking about this conversation, it's good for us to know everything that the issue of suicide, what all that it encapsulates. In that way, it would help us know if the law is sufficient or is good enough to, or if the law has been helpful in rehabilitating people or creating, or if it is even adding to the problem that is already on ground. Thank you. So it's on this juncture that I'm going to be inviting Mrs. Ifoma from Cheld to speak to us about this part of the conversation. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Queen, for putting this together. And welcome everyone again to this session. I'm very happy that this is an ongoing conversation, and we're speaking about some of these issues. So my name is Ifoma Arowolo. I'm the head of legal department for Cheld. Cheld is Center for Health Ethics, Law and Development. So when it comes to, I'm sorry that you might be hearing some background noise. Apologies, you might be hearing some background noise. I'm actually in trance.
Hi, we can't hear you. I don't know if it's from me or if it's from you. Please, if
Sorry,
someone
so
can hear me,
sorry.
please let me know.
Yes, I'm actually in transit, so you might be hearing some background noise. So yes, like, I'm happy that we're having these conversations, and at Cheld, we've been advocating for the decriminalization of attempted suicide. So attempted suicide in Nigeria is a criminal offense, and we've provided support in this area, in this field. We were part of the team that we provided support in drafting the mental health bill. And as far as we know, that bill has not been attended to by the president. So suicide is a crime in Nigeria. So we've had some states draft their mental health laws. For instance, in Lagos State, they have the mental health law says that when the person is arrested for attempted suicide, the person is sent to a rehabilitation center. So we have some concerns around some of all those laws. The point is that the person is arrested by the police for attempting suicide, then has to face being put in a cell, then has to come before a court to explain why. And you're going to be put in a dock with criminals. And sometimes they're even sentenced that if they are not able or they're not fortunate enough to get proper legal representation. So we've had various cases. For instance, the most recent one was one of the incidents that was reported in Punch, about a young boy that was arrested and was in prison, and somebody reached out to the team and we tried to get him help. But at the point when we reached out to him, he had already been put on bail and had been in the cell for a very long period of time because he couldn't meet his bail conditions. At that time, his mental health had really deteriorated because he was put in the cell with some armed robbers and kidnappers. And they made him, I think he was a cleaner of the cell at that point. And he kept asking questions around why he's in cell. He didn't even understand why he was being kept in a prison and why he was even put on bail. So, but fortunately enough, we're able to take up his case. We work with the Director of Public Prosecution, the AG's office in Lagos State, and they were able to work with us on that. And luckily for him, he was discharged and acquitted. But then the idea is that attempting suicide in Nigeria is a criminal offense. So even with the mental health law of Lagos State referring the person or the victim to an institution for rehabilitation, the person still has to go through that process and deteriorates their mental health more because they are put in a cell, they have to apply for bail, you have to come before a magistrate and explain the situation before we make any form of progress. So those are some of the issues that Cheld we've been clamorizing for the decriminalization of the attempted suicide. So far, we still have that in play in some other states. We're even lucky that some of all these cases happen in Lagos, where we can work with the Ministry of Justice and get them discharged and acquitted. But we have other states where they're not even close to talking about mental health and not even talk about drafting a law. So these are the issues. So in some of those states, the person is actually sentenced and there is no way. These are some of the legal issues, some of the concerns at Cheld we've been advocating for. And well, the government have been trying to make progress on that, but we're still where we are. Thank you so much, Queen, for putting this together. I'm very happy that this conversation is ongoing.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ifoma. That was very, very insightful. And I mean, this provision, I know that, I mean, we are all aware that this is still a common law provision that has still, that has still not been changed, even though this practice is not applicable in other parts of the world. It's still like one of the things that is still pending in Nigeria, because suicide, people might see it and imagine that, oh, it's not effective, it's not being enforced. But the fact that that law still prevails is even a problem, because it's not helping in a way to rehabilitate people, but then it just ends up making the issue worsen. And it is in this light that I would even want to call on Barrister James Ibo. I hope he's still on this call of the basic rights. Because I know that he's been working a lot on this issue, on the subject matter. So I know that there's a lot he's been doing in that field. And let me check just to confirm that he's on this call so he can lend his voice to the conversation. Thank you very much, Barrister James. I'll leave the floor for you.
Hello. Hello.
We can hear you. We can hear you clearly. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Queen, and all the speakers. Honestly, I've been educated. It has been very interesting, even though network has actually frustrated my ability to listen fully. But before network will interrupt, I want to quickly say that the biggest problem, the biggest challenge we have in Nigeria on issues of mental health and suicidal ideation is the fact that we don't have social welfare services in Nigeria. And where they appear to exist, government think is charity. Social welfare is not charity, it's a right. And it is sad that in the 21st century, we still have provisions in our Criminal Code Act that makes a suicide attempt a criminal offense. The last presentation actually nailed it. You can imagine what somebody will have to go through, even stay in police custody, and if not for their intervention, the person would have been tried and maybe convicted. And I don't know how. In fact, the provisions of the Criminal Code Act itself is in conflict with the basic principles of criminal trial. Elements of any crime, there are two primary elements of any crime, which is the physical element and the mental element, which is expressed in Latin as the actus reus and the mens rea. So somebody who attempts suicide most of the time does not have the mental element of the crime is not present because the person is not in control, is not in charge. So how do you, assuming the physical element of the attempt itself is present, the mental element is lacking? So why do you even, as a police officer, commence an investigation when what you're trying to investigate primarily is attempted suicide? No same person attempts suicide. So the person needs help, needs government help, family help, than even police investigation and prosecution. We need to begin to see social welfare services as a right, as citizens' rights, and begin to establish rehabilitation centers and build networks to support people who are going through mental health issues. I think that is what I just want to contribute at this stage. A lot of people are having these ideas, a lot of people are committing suicide, and the government seem not, in fact, government don't even have reliable statistics. And government don't seem to be planning. If you see government long-term and medium-term plans, none has to do with taking care of vulnerable people in our society, including those who suffer mental health issues. So I think, unfortunately, I've not heard anybody from a state actor here. We have to do enough, a lot. I'm happy Queen and those of you who helped to put this together, we just have to continue and sustain this conversation. A lot of people are very ignorant about these issues. We have to step up the campaign and the advocacy to educate more people, so we get people in government to make right policies that will support people who are dealing with one issue or the other that makes them contemplate suicide. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Barrister James. That was very insightful. I mean, it just really strengthened the conversation, because I usually say that for one to when it comes to situations of suicide, it's not about the person. I would say this, it's not that the person actually wants to leave, but these people actually contemplate doing that, or actually complete the act of killing themselves, because they don't feel like they are wanted anymore. They don't feel loved. So how can you be so strict on someone who is in need of care, is in need of help? How do you now put on a punitive act upon them? So we are really hoping, and we are really hoping and still writing and creating advocacy and awareness and positive, just keeping a positive mind and hoping that this part of the law will be done away with. Thank you very much. So it's on this note that I'm going to call on, this time I didn't put this part of the conversation for anyone in particular, because I wanted to keep it open for anybody to contribute to it. First of all, I'll mesh this question to two, because I also want to leave room for people who have suggestions and questions I want their questions to be answered. So the question here is, how can we help someone how can the health sector and the legal sector provide help for suicidal ideation, or people who are at risk of committing or dying by suicide? I don't like to use the word committing, because committing now already gives everyone the impression that it is a crime. So how can we create help for people who are at risk of dying by suicide? And how can we as individuals in the society contribute to creating a safer and warmer and kinder environment for people to thrive? So first of all, I don't know let me check. I don't know, is there anyone who would like to take that part? But before I keep the house open, I'm just going to give the floor first to Mr. David to speak on this particular question. Whatever part you want to address. Do you want to address the help part? Do you want to address how you can create a safer environment for people to thrive? So we just want you to lend a voice to this question. Are you there?
Okay, hi everybody once again. I hope you can hear me. Thank you very much to all the speakers. I've learned so much. I was multitasking, I was doing something else, but I was making sure I was listening to everybody. How can we help those at risk of suffering from suicide? We need to take the conversation, we need to bring the conversation home. We need to make sure that there is an avenue for them to be heard. More needs to be done by the government, other relevant stakeholders, CSOs, NGOs, private organizations, and individuals like ourselves to make it easier, because that's the basis. If people can speak about what's on their mind that is making them contemplate or have the thoughts of suicide, if people can talk about it, they can talk about it, then it goes a long way in curbing the trend of suicide in our society. So we all have a part to play. We can't leave it to the professionals. I was talking at a meeting yesterday, and we're talking about the number of mental health professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists in the country. It's way less than the recommended number from the World Health Organization. So we can't keep leaving this to the professionals. Every single one of us on this meeting should be able to play a part by being able to say the right things to people who have these challenges. I think one of the speakers said something: even if you don't know what to say, try not to say the wrong thing. Point the person to the right direction of somebody who can help you. There are things we shouldn't say to people like people who have these challenges. And then I think that's the basis, that's the groundwork for helping people who are at risk of suffering from suicide. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. David. Thank you so much. So when it comes to that aspect, I'm going to speak from the legal angle, right? First of all, we've already spoken about the whole part and the idea of criminalizing attempted suicide without even considering the need for mental health care and treatment. And we already know that this, the fact that the government hasn't realized that this is inhumane and has not also seen that what these people need is not even about, it's not for those stringent actions, but it's more or less like it's more or less the need for committing these people to therapy, doing what will be necessary to help them see that they are part of the community. And even just seeing that this law was something that has already been, it was a common law doctrine that has already been abolished. And I mean, one time I was reading through just to understand why this doctrine was enforced at the time. And this was because, one, it was seen to be spiritual and temporal. Spiritual in the sense that, one, a person was evading the prerogative of the Almighty and rushing into his presence uncalled for. And also by temporal, you were violating the king's duty of ensuring protection for the subjects, for instance. So seeing that the people who were actually emulating that principle from, they've already gone, they've evolved, they no longer see it in that light, then we as advocates, as policymakers, and we as policymakers really have a lot more to do in lending a voice to ensure that this policy, this law is being done away with. So that's one part. And then the other part I want to point out is the fact that we just have to learn to be more sensitive to the people that are living around us. Just lending a hand of care. We really need to be more human. When I mean more human, it's humanity cuts across board. It cuts across so much. Okay, let's say in the workplace, for instance, we have that duty to ensure that we are not toxic to our fellow workers. It's not just a matter of saying, oh, the employer has to do this. As employees, are we creating a toxic environment for other people? Are we good with teamwork, with team building? These are things that we really have to sit down and take a close look at. We have to ensure that amongst our family members, we are actually there to show care. We are there to listen. I mean, listen without judging, listen without stigma. Because one thing that has to do with suicidal ideation, suicidal tendencies, is when you know that you have no one to talk to. People want to be able to share their experiences with someone. A lot of people don't have direction in life, right? They just want to have that sense of belonging. They want to know that there's someone out there who actually cares about me. So those are things that I see that are things that are really not, paid attention to, that those are things that are neglected. And if we give more credence to situations of this sort, things will get better. And then I also talk about, another thing I like to strengthen on is the fact that for anyone who is going through a situation in their life, you should know that you are not your thoughts. You are the one who notices them, but those thoughts are not yours. The more we hold and give attention to negative thoughts, the more they stay. So when you're having those negativities, those negative, thoughts that are plaguing your mind and all, it's your place to shake them off. And shaking them off is just, I'm not saying that it's an easy thing to do, but just the fact that you recognize that this is happening to you, then it would help you to see that this thought is not mine, it's a negative thought. So that thing about being aware of your thoughts and paying attention to them, and then knowing when to speak to someone. I mean, we all have friends. I believe so that a lot of people have people they can confide in, people they can talk to. Those are times that you don't need to be alone. You have to reach out to somebody else. And then people should also learn to do things that they love to, like things that you love to do, even if you don't feel like they will help. But you never know until you do that thing you love. For someone who loves to read, for instance, or someone who loves to let's say you love to go out, you love to see movies, for instance. When you're in that place where you don't feel like you're feeling up to yourself, those are things that are very essential, like just going back to the things you love to do and doing them and seeing if it helps. And also knowing that these are things that would also, these thoughts comes, and it's not peculiar to one person. It's a thought that anyone else sometimes feel. I mean, it might not get to the point where you're having suicidal ideation, but you just have that feeling of setback, or you're grieving about something you lost, or you just don't, you're feeling, having that feeling of emptiness, like you're not enough, or you've not done so much in life. Those are things that when people understand that they're not the only ones in this situation, that it can happen to anyone can feel this way. So when you recognize that it's not a lonely feeling, it's a feeling that can be aligned to anyone else, like everyone else in certain times. So it's not peculiar to just you. Knowing that you're not alone in that kind of in that kind of situation gives you the strength to see that you too can overcome. And then connecting with other people, because I always say this, that we are social beings. We are built for community. We are meant for community. So I don't know of any individual that can just thrive by just being alone. We need people. That's why we are human beings. That's what human beings are created for. We need people. We need people in our space. We need people to talk to. We need people for direction. So it's also for us to help, to also ensure to have that relationship, to try to build connections, so that in the situations where we are unable to, be our own strength, we can lean on somebody else as our own support system. Thank you very much. Is there somebody else who has something to add, a question, a suggestion? Okay, I see Mr. Ahi's hand is up. Please, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you so much for such a wonderful and stimulating relief comments. But I also want to just add that we should learn to build a community of psychologically safe employees and family members. And how do we do this? Don't throw to people only things they couldn't achieve, areas where they failed. Throw at them or discuss with them things they conquered, achievement they made, successes they've achieved. When we are doing this, we are helping them improve their mental health condition. Again, we have to learn, like you already mentioned, we learn to help people normalize situations they are going through, share life experience. Don't let them feel they are not alone within this space. You've been through this. Look at what happened. Look at how you're able to overcome this. And above all that, we have to look out for each other. Like you said, we are a community of people, human beings. Let's build social support. Look out for each other. What I've learned to do these days is that people I have not seen for a long time, I just call them. We have become so fragmentized, fractured. We don't look out for each other anymore. The next thing we see is someone's obituary on television or social media page. Look out for each other. Call people. What I do right now, when someone's matter crosses my heart, whatever I'm doing, I stop and I call that person. And this has helped so greatly, because when I call some people, I find out that they're in the big mess of their lives. And we must learn to do it. Then we must learn to show compassion and empathy. We must learn to show compassion and empathy towards people when they're going through a lot. And above all, we have to learn the art of listening. Like I will always say, the world is short of listeners. People want to talk, and there are no people to listen. We have to learn the art of active listening without necessarily blaming them for what they have done or what they haven't done. Is very important. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ehi. That was also very profound. I hope that we are actually taking note of some of these things and in fact, everything that has been mentioned. Thank you very much. So I see that Barbara's hand is up. Barbara, do you have something to add to the conversation? You can unmute yourself and speak up if you're still there.
Yeah, I'm still there. I'm actually I just made an observation. I don't know whether I missed it because I joined late. Not that late, although I didn't join at the beginning of the maybe now. But I was surprised I didn't hear people discuss about one of the reasons that causes some people to try to think of committing suicide. And I feel it's a very important reason, and that is economic hardship and the frustration you understand they face. I think that is a reason that causes some people to want to commit suicide. And I don't think I heard anyone speak about that, which I believe I know I heard some reasons mentioned, but I don't think I heard anyone mention such reason. I feel that is that's one major reason too. That also
Okay.
gets some people frustrated and causes them to want to commit suicide. So I just felt I should mention that. Maybe I missed that.
Okay, thank you very much, Barbara. That was the first conversation we had when the conversation started. We talked about understanding what suicide was about, the causes, and we even talked about the risk. I mean, when it comes to the issue of suicidal ideations and all, it stems from various of factors. It doesn't just part of this. Part of the causation can also be economic factors. It can be just anything at the end of the day. It depends on the individual and the kind of things that affect them as a person, because there are people who are going through very tough times, but they still have that resilient spirit. And then there are other people who would go through the same thing, but they can't hold it. So at the end of the day, I know that our professionals would be able to strengthen on that point, where we know that there are people who know, like for the part of our brain that manages stress. For some people, some persons can manage stress better than other persons. Some other persons, they just have that flight mode. Once they are triggered by stress or any factor, all they want to do is flight, and that flight can literally just be like, I need to leave. So yes, so you're correct. There are a lot of factors, but at the end of the day, with or without these things, you don't. So it's more or less like, yes, there are things that would cause one to have this tendency of wanting to die by suicide, but the ability for us not to depend on that thing, that causation, because at the end of the day, whatever situation anyone has to go through or is going through, it would definitely pass. I don't know if my contribution to your question helped in any way. Are you there, Barbara? Hello? Okay.
Yeah, I heard you perfectly well.
Yeah, so we talked about that at the beginning of the conversation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. So
Queen, you're on mute. You should unmute yourself.
oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know I was muted. I don't even know the last thing I said. What was the last thing I said, please? Can you help me out?
You had just thanked Barbara for Barbara had just responded to you before you went on mute.
Okay, so Dr. Obong, I was just asking if you had something else to contribute to how people can get help and how we can also contribute to creating a safer, warmer, and kinder environment for other people to thrive. If there's anything else you want to add to that to help people here, people in the conversation, so they can actually just emulate it when they go back to their daily lives.
Okay. I'll just say one or two things now. Suicide is a global thing. It's not just Nigeria. It's a global thing. And global problems need government support. Okay, global problems need government support. But the basic things that can be done to prevent suicide is, one, awareness that it's a problem. And just like malaria, it can happen to anybody. It can happen to anybody, any of your loved ones. So the first thing usually would be to prevent accumulation of pesticides in your house, pesticides, medicine, or firearm or rat poison. Because because the most common means is drinking pesticides. That's the most common means. So whereby a person doesn't have access to such, it's more difficult. Okay, so the first thing, prevent it. Then number two, one would need to foster psychosocial communications. We're in a world whereby people are married to their phones, to their Snapchats, to their Instagram handles. So we need to foster communication. When a person tells you, I don't feel too good, or I'm feeling sad or whatever, that's the point whereby he or she needs more attention. Like one of the speakers said, try to talk to people more, check on them more. Now, the third thing is awareness. You have to be aware that this is a problem and it has been increasing. It is a problem. When you are aware, you can refer to a facility or an establishment that handles mental health issues. Now, prevention is the key thing. Prevention is the key thing. We do things like awareness campaign, like what we're doing now, Quinel. Awareness campaigns is very important. Secondary schools, because the main age that this happens is 15 to 29. People, their lives more around that age. Okay, so we need to pay attention to this. Then something in mental health can be mindfulness training, cognitive behavioral therapy, but mindfulness is something that we need to teach people more of. It's also resilience building. Okay, there's a therapy that people need to learn, whereby they handle negative emotions that come from being denied certain things, being denied or rather unmet expectations. They learn to manage this negative emotional states. So these are the basic things. Then government support is important, like support, because it's a global thing and on our own, we might not really do much. Then media reporting, the media houses need to be careful how they report suicides. Every day I see online, I see on Opera News, they're posting deaths, they're posting banditry, they're posting armed conflict, even suicides. So media reporting can also increase the risk. So these are ways that I've indicated to reduce the prevalence of suicide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Obong. We are going to take note of, in fact, we've already taken note of that, even though I worry about how the media can actually help, especially that part where you said, that media reporting can increase the rate of suicide. Can you quickly just respond to this part so that I can gain clarity on how this can increase the rate of suicide?
Okay, first, there are well-known factors that increase rates. There are studies that have been done on suicide rates, and a couple of the studies, even United Nations and CDC studies and WHO, have indicated that how the media reports suicide has been shown to increase the risk. And some of the ways fingered in this would be people are exposed to media and they can copy what they see. Found out that this person killed herself by doing this and this and this. That will make a person want to try it out. So the media will awareness. So if you want to report a death, we can say, okay, this person died, but don't go ahead and say how he died. Because most people who want to commit suicide, they're looking for a painless way out of this world.
Okay.
So that's how it's included.
Okay. So the point here is how it's okay to let people know that someone died by suicide, but not what means they use in completing the act, or what substance was used in completing the act. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the media should be trained on how to report it.
Okay.
Media should be trained on how to report suicide. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we are already at the end of this conversation. I don't know if anybody else has something to say, because I'll be wrapping up right away. If somebody else has something to contribute, please feel free to do that.
Yes,
Okay.
hello, Queen.
Yes, I can hear you. Please go on.
All right, thank you so much for putting this together. Just like every other person has said, I've learned quite a lot listening to all the speakers. But I want to come from the faith-based perspective. In as much as there are scientific approaches to solving the problem of suicide, I also want us to understand that a relationship with God goes a long way to handle some of the challenges or the issues in people's lives that lead them to attempting or eventually committing suicide. There's this particular scripture that stood out so strong in my heart as I listened to all the conversations. It's in Luke chapter 18, verse 1, Amplified Classic Bible Translation. There, Jesus was giving a parable, and Amplified Classic brought it out that is fits within the context of the discussion we're having this evening. He said Jesus gave them a parable to this effect, that men should pray so that they don't give up, so that they don't faint, so they don't turn cowardly in the face of the challenges of life, so that they don't lose heart. And these are the factors that lead people to begin to contemplate suicide or eventually commit suicide. When somebody feels overwhelmed by the challenges of life and the person begins to think that the best thing about this life is just to end it all, the person has given up, the person is fainting in the heart, the person is losing heart, the person is turning cowardly in the face of that challenge. Because the truth is that nobody on earth is exempted from challenge. But the issue is, how do we approach the challenge? And in my own personal relationship with God, I have come to find out one thing that is striking. For every challenge that confronts any human being on earth, if you look critically, the solution to the problem is within the challenge. But the problem is that many people think that the solution is not within the challenge. So they feel so overwhelmed. But if you look critically into that challenge, into that situation, the solution is within the situation. But when you have a relationship with God, it's an added advantage. It also brings you to a place where you have supernatural connection to help you overcome the challenges of life. So I will also encourage anyone that is facing pressures that might lead to challenge to consider God. Somebody said something. If you look left and there is no solution, you look right, there is no solution. You look back and look front and there's no solution. Don't think that your options are over. Look up. Help comes from above. If there is no solution, left, right, and center, front and back, look up. Help will come from above. So I believe that if people consider the faith-based option in solving
very much. Thank you.
they
Thank
will
you very
not
much.
attempt suicide. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for this platform. I'm so grateful.
Thank you very much. We have, I mean, that was also very helpful. Thank you so much for adding that. So it's at this juncture that we are coming to the end of the conversation. I just want us to two things. Hello. I want us to just take note of two things: that we should learn to be more compassionate, and we should also know that happiness is the journey. So the more we are compassionate towards someone else, the more we are giving them the room to thrive better and to even speak up when they are in situations of need. Thank you very much, and
thank you, Queen. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Crystal Educational. Knowledge is golden.